back to this week's Self-Love Masterclass. My name is Renee Mullings-Lewis. I'm a self-love teacher, coach, a Reiki master, as well as a doula. And I create these videos each week for people just like you so that you can create an amazing relationship with yourself. Why? Because I truly believe that self-love, the relationship that we have with ourselves, is the foundation upon which we create, we attract, and we manifest everything in our lives. So if you're joining me for the first time, welcome. And for those of you who have been with me for a long time and are subscribers, thank you. It's so good to be back here with you today. Today, we are talking about how to tell the people that we love something really big or really important without hurting their feelings. I know that this is really tough and challenging. We are people who love people and we're in relationships, whether you're married or you're with a partner or it's your child or a colleague or just a really good friend. We want to be people who are true to ourselves. We want to be honest and we want to have, good communication and full transparency in our relationships. But sometimes it's not so easy to say the things that we need to say because maybe they're things that might hurt the other person, or they're things that we need to talk about that can be a little bit sensitive. The first thing that I want to say is, even people who would themselves say they're the most awesome communicators struggle with this. So know that if there's something that you have to say or something that you've been wanting to say for a long time but you haven't been, that it's really normal and it's okay. I often hear people say things like, oh, I'm just too chicken. And I think that really undermines the courage that it takes to even be somebody who wants to say something that's really tough and difficult to someone that we love. Really, don't be too hard on yourself and understand that it's something that everybody struggles with. And chances are, if you have something that you want to say to someone and it's tough for you, they probably feel the same trying to tell you something that is important to them that's a little bit sensitive. So it's usually a two-way street. And when you do dive in to have this conversation, they might, feel a little bit sensitive, but it actually creates an opening for them to then share their feelings, which just frees everybody up in the long run. So tip number one is you really want to explain your motivation. And what I mean by that is you want to say to your loved one why you want to have the conversation with them. So a good example would be, listen, I love you so much and I'm really committed that we have amazing intimacy and connection with each other and that we continue to grow together. And so that's the reason why I want to have this conversation, because I love you and I care. You really want to set this up because this is going to teach the person that you're talking to, or I shouldn't say teach, instead it's prepare the person for how they should be listening to you. Most people, when they hear that we want to have a talk or there's something that they need to tell us, they start to get tight and feel scared or defensive. So by saying what your motivation is or saying what your intention is, it allows the person to understand why the conversation is happening, which will have them usually receive your communication with a little bit more ease. Tip number two is timing is everything. Oh, I can't even begin to stress the importance of it. So it's probably not a good idea to talk about something really sensitive in front of a large group of people. Most people don't feel comfortable with their private affairs or personal things being shared in front of a group, and certainly not without their permission, or they don't like these things being shared in public. And it's not to say that, you should be hiding or that you should be fake or phony when you're with your friends. It's just think about the other person and how they might feel and if they would be okay with it. So you want to make sure that the environment is safe for the other person as well as for yourself. Also, You want to be sure that it is actually a time that works. And what I mean by that is, like, you want to ensure that that person has all of their faculties, or that they're in a good or great position to be able to listen to you. When your husband is under a car, that's not necessarily the best time to have that conversation. Maybe while your wife is breastfeeding, or while she's working on something, is not necessarily the best time to have a conversation. Or when she's looking in the mirror is not the time to have a conversation with her about her health and her weight. Really think about the timing, because if you pick a really great time for that person, then it's more likely that they'll be more self-aware and more in their bodies and able to listen to you without being defensive or feeling judged. Tip number 3 is you really want to be mindful about how you speak, and specifically the language that you use. When I'm talking to my clients and I'm preparing them for a tough conversation, I ask them to try to avoid saying things like, "You make me feel," "You're the one who always does this," those kinds of statements. For example, always is an exaggeration, or certainly the other person will likely see it as an exaggeration because it's not a fact. So you want to try to avoid things that are that create an exaggeration, like always or never. And then you also want to avoid saying you, because when you say you do this, you do that, you don't, that kind of thing, it makes people feel blamed. So instead, what I recommend is you saying, "This is how I feel, this is my experience." Again, this is how I feel, this is my experience. When you say "this is how I feel" or "this is my experience," then you're taking responsibility for your feelings, you're taking responsibility for your point of view and the way that you see it, instead of being somebody who's like, "The way I see it is the way that it is." Because if you're stuck saying "the way that I see it is the way that it is," you don't leave room for another person's point of view or another person's perspective, and then you're very more than likely going to get into a very big conflict or a very big fight. Next, you want to ask for their honest feedback. This means that now that you've had an opportunity to say how you feel and say what your experience is, you want to give the other person the opportunity to say how they feel and what their experience is. And you've got to appreciate that you might be a little bit hurt, or you might not have necessarily seen it the way that they do. So there's going to be a ton of emotions that may come up for you. And just like they were patient with you and they listened, you want to offer them the same thing back, right? And here's the thing. Sometimes our partners are not as, how do I say this? Sometimes our partners are not as practiced at listening patiently. So let's say when you were sharing your part, they interrupted you a little bit, or they acted in a way that made you feel like they weren't necessarily listening. Don't lash back at them and dish it back at them. It's not going to go very well. You want to just kind of just observe them and listen, and then give them the floor. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that goes into like how to, argue successfully and stuff like that, but perhaps we'll do another video on that. The next thing that I say is it's really important for you to watch your body language and your facial expressions. And I know this can be tough, right? Because those things are so automatic, and for a lot of us, we've had a lot of those faces and expressions going on since we were kids. try to do your best to just be aware of your body. For example, I know that sometimes I do this thing where I wrinkle my nose and I make a face like this when somebody else is talking. And so even though I'm not using my words, my face is speaking volumes. That's the kind of thing that you want to be mindful of. That can be a defensive strategy or a way to interject or interrupt the other person in a very passive-aggressive way. So my recommendation is that while you're talking, you really concentrate on being open, being loving, being compassionate, and being kind with the way that you're speaking, so that your face and your body mirror that. And then if your partner or your friend or your colleague or whoever it is speaking, you also take on being loving and compassionate and listening that way, so that your face and your body is also reflecting that active listening and really just being open to what they're saying, okay? All right, so the next tip is it's really important to just put yourself in their shoes. And if you put yourself in their shoes, you're going to speak to that. You're going to say, okay, if I was this person and somebody was telling me this kind of information or saying these things to me, how would I feel? And so when you do that, there's a level of compassion that you're going to experience for them. So I really recommend that you do this while you're in the conversation, but it also might be a great thing to think about this even when you're preparing to have the conversation with them, because it's going to help you to determine then what would be the best place or the time to have it. How might you use language differently with this person, etc., etc. But definitely put yourself in their shoes. Remember, the relationship is not only about you. Certainly you're responsible for your own happiness and for speaking up, but it is a relationship. There are two people, and it's really important that we think about both people and not just ourselves, right? Because this is a relationship. If we wanted to not care about another person's feelings, we wouldn't have friends and we wouldn't be in a relationship then, right? And last but not least, it's really great if at the end of the conversation, you can ask that person, you know, what are you left with, or how are you feeling now? Again, the whole intention, which you would have created before you had this conversation, was to be honest and to be transparent and to improve communication, to bring you closer together. So you want to ask the person at the end, what are they left with, or how are they feeling? Now, this doesn't mean that after the communication, everything has to be solved or everything has to be rosy or merry. You want to leave room for that person to say, hey, maybe I'm feeling a little bit sad or disappointed or heartbroken or angry or frustrated or confused or whatever it is that they're feeling. Maybe they'll say, thank you, I was wondering what was off or what was wrong, and now I feel more connected. But if they don't feel immediately more connected after, that's okay. Don't fret and don't think that something's wrong. Just remember that we all need time to process things, to process our feelings, our emotions, and the things that have been said. And particularly if it's something sensitive, it may take your friend, your partner, your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your child, a little bit of time to let that sink in. That doesn't mean you failed. That doesn't mean that it was bad. And it doesn't mean that you shouldn't have done it if everyone is not happy and cheery at the end. You'll get there. If it is a relationship that is healthy and going in a direction that really serves you, then even though you might have some of these little tough spots and bumps and patches, you'll get through it. Love always softens things and brings people who are meant to be together closer together, not farther apart. So that's something that you can hang on to. Okay. So If you are going to have that tough conversation, or you're going to sit down and do that, know that you're a brave person, you're a courageous person, and you're someone who stands for the truth. There are a lot of people who would much rather brush things under the carpet or never talk about things. And it's not necessarily, I'm not going to say that that's bad, because everyone has their way and we're not here to judge. I'm only saying that there's a real opportunity if you're in a relationship, a friendship, a partnership, where you can be the kind of people who can say the tough stuff and still love each other unconditionally and still come together. So give yourself a round of applause or a pat on the back for just being somebody who's courageous enough to try to have that kind of intimacy and connection with the people in your lives. And then I just want to say, you know, best of luck. And if you need to come back and watch this video over and over again as prep, then feel free to do it. This video is not going anywhere, and it's here for you whenever you need it. All right, my friends, it has been so wonderful doing this video for you. It is truly a pleasure for me to come out here and make these videos. I just feel like we're all human, we all go through stuff, and the more honest we are about the things that we go through, the closer it will bring us all together, because life is really about, you know, people and relationships and friends and family, and that's what makes the world go round. Anyway, so good to be with you again this week. If you are not already following me on Instagram, come over and do that. My Instagram handle is @ModernDayWiseWoman. It's all one word, and I post there almost every day. I think you'll enjoy those posts. We've got a little over 7,000 people there now, so things are going really great. Also, did you like this video? Yes? I'm hoping you did. If you did, then please give this video a thumbs up and let me know. Last but not least, if you're not already subscribed to this YouTube channel, then please do that. I think the button's up here or down here, or I don't know, the button's in one of these places or below. Depends on what device you are watching this on. But please, if you're not already subscribed to this YouTube channel, subscribe, because I do videos every week. They're released every Monday or Tuesday. Sometimes I do them early on Monday. So you can also do you can also do video notifications. I think you can do, yeah, you can do video notifications. Don't ask me how you do it, but apparently you can do it. Some people have told me that they've done it for my videos, which is so awesome. Thank you for doing that. Anyway, if somebody knows how you do that, can you post that in the comments below so other people know how to do that? Thank you so much. All right, you guys, I am going to go and have a smoothie and go enjoy the rest of my day. I love you all, and have yourselves a wonderful week. Mwah.